Good morning, everybody, and indeed good afternoon and good evening for many of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Alex Campbell. I'm the Head of Research and Policy at the International Hydropower Association, and I'm really delighted to be here today sharing this webinar with the Long Duration Energy Storage Council, LDES. We'll be hearing a little bit more about both organisations later on. First of all, you'll be hearing from the LDES Council, who launched in November 2021, who will be new to some of you, so they will present themselves. Then I'll be delighted to talk about the findings from the International Forum on Pump Storage Hydropower, which was a major initiative that ran until September last year with some really relevant findings and work for the whole of the long duration storage energy community. We'll then go back to LDES to hear from their net zero power report findings before another report on clean PPAs, and then an update on the Accelerate LDES financing platform. And then before we conclude, we'll have a really exciting and interesting panel discussion from some IHA members and LDES Council members to talk through some of the major challenges for both pump storage hydropower and long duration storage more generally. As we go through the session, please do feel free to submit questions through the chat function. Hopefully you'll be very familiar now with Zoom platforms and chat and so on, and we'll do our best, of course, to either answer the questions during the relevant section or in the panel discussion at the end. So with that, I'll be delighted to hand over to Julia Sauder from the LDES, and if we can just move to Julia's slide, please. There she is. I'm sure she'll jump on in a moment. She's got over 20 years of experience in the energy and environmental sectors, long-time advocate of clean energy technology, having worked extensively to support environmentally friendly technologies and equitable policies. She's held a wide range of senior positions, including at the LDES Association of California, the National Resources Defense Council, Clean Line Energy Partners, the US Department of Energy, and as an entrepreneur at JAS Energies. Julia, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex, so much. It's great to be here today and really appreciate the opportunity to share the screen and to really promote all the great work that IHA is doing and introduce ourselves and the council, and looking forward to more partnerships as we grow ahead together. Next slide, thanks. So as Alex mentioned, we were launched at COP26 to really bring together an amazing group of members to demonstrate the value out of long duration energy storage with fact-based reports for society's benefits, really taking a deep look at all the different types of energy storage for long duration, electrochemical, chemical, gravity, mechanical, and bringing together executives from a really unique group who realize there is an importance to accelerating decarbonization and how it's essential to have long duration energy storage involved in the global discussion. So we're really excited that we've become this international council working together with our anchor members. If you see on the next slide, you can see a little more diversity of all the groups that we're bringing together. We're thrilled that we are continuing to grow and accelerate decarbonization through the diversity of technology providers. So representing over about 11 different types of technologies within those 4 categories, and matching together with customers and financiers and others who really do see the value add and want to be part of the process to decarbonizing our global system with long duration energy storage, and working together, bringing together all these experts to work on a ton of different policies and fact-based information to start creating the market that we need to have long duration energy storage play a significant role. Next slide, thanks. So as Alex mentioned, and as we're here to promote too in conjunction with their reports, we are bringing together all the expertise and knowledge with all of our members and various working groups to demonstrate what can we provide and what's the market share, what is the true value out of long duration energy storage, how are we justifying the societal benefits. And so at COP26 we launched the flagship 2021 net zero power report that Hodart will speak a bit more to in a few minutes. We just recently also published our 24/7 clean power purchase agreement, which I'll highlight some of the key factors here and findings. We're getting a ton of feedback and also just opening a lot of doors and conversations to really understanding the flexibility that long duration energy storage can provide to a more reliable, resilient energy grid. And just later this week, you're going to see a new policy report come out demonstrating all these different components of long duration energy storage and using some of the existing tools and building it, and building on those to create new tools so we can have long duration energy storage really meet all the needs as we decarbonize in our system moving forward, and making sure it has a role to play as we make the pie bigger for all of us as we really move forward to and accelerate during the speed that we have to do this. So I'm thrilled to be here today, looking forward to working with all of you, looking forward to the questions. Again, excited to promote all the great work that our members are doing with our knowledge partner, McKinsey, and really look forward to the ongoing partnership we have with IHA and organizations. So thanks again. And I'm going to hand it over back to Alex to really share with us all this great new insight that they've gained from their membership and what they've done on pump storage. As great it is a huge component to long duration energy storage.
Thank you so much, Julia. So if we can move to the next slide, please, Rebecca. So just a brief mention on the IHA. Hopefully, for those of you in the hydropower sector, you will have very much heard of us. We are the voice of sustainable hydropower. Our members are active in over 120 countries. We've got over 100 members, and we've really worked for many years now with a wide range of stakeholders to really push the case for hydropower as a sustainable, renewable energy source in electricity systems. If you want to get in touch with us to talk more about the work we do, in particular around our sustainability standard and so on, please do get in touch with us offline. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So I'm hoping that many of you will already know what pumped storage hydropower is. A brief school lesson, if not. So it's a very simple concept, well established for many, many years. You have two reservoirs, one at the top of a hill, one at the bottom of a hill. When electricity is cheap, we pump the water up the hill, and then when it's expensive, we release that water to drive a turbine. Extremely, as I say, well established. And the model over many years was a quite simple arbitrage model. So we had nuclear power, coal power, when it was more efficient to run through the night. So you knew that electricity demand would be down. So that's when you pump the water up the hill, then released it again during the day. Now, obviously, electricity systems are changing, and so that model has had to be adjusted. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Next slide, please, Rebecca. One important segue is, conventional pump storage hydropower is attached to river systems, much as conventional hydropower is. But you can have off-river or closed-loop pump storage as well. So this really takes advantage of the fact that you don't have to be connected to a river system other than for the initial filling, as it were, of the reservoirs. And our friends at the Australian National University did a global atlas, actually looking at the potential globally for these types of off-river sites. And they found at a high-level initial pass more than 600,000 potential sites, which together could provide 23,000 terawatt hours of storage. Now, of course, in reality, not all of those sites would be viable sites, but it gives you a sense of the scale and the potential that is out there. And of course, pump storage today is one of the most significant forms of storage on electricity grids by our estimates, over 90% at the moment. So it really goes to show that there is tremendous potential out there. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So just a quick global breakdown. These numbers are actually hot off the press. They're from our forthcoming hydropower status report. As you can see, with over 160 gigawatts of installed capacity around the world, it is a significant player. China, as you can see there, leads the way, followed by Japan and the US, and then many of the Alpine European nations also have significant fleets in operation. We've got a pump storage tracker tool on our website. If you're interested in seeing it, you can go and look at most of the sites that are actually either in operation and many that are under construction. That's easily searchable on our website. As I said, the pump storage tracker tool, so please do go and take a look. We're in the brink of updating that as well to include some national policies information, but the tool is live and available at the moment in its current version. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So again, hopefully for most of you, this particular aspect won't be news. Electricity systems are changing around the world, and what we're seeing is a huge shift away from the generation like coal and gas, which is reliable. We know when it's going to happen. In the case of gas, it's super flexible. Coal, a bit less flexible, but you know when it's going to be on, and you can plan your electricity system accordingly. Of course, with net zero, with the imperative of climate change, we have to move away from that. And as we know, we need to put huge amounts of wind and solar on the system there. This chart is an illustration of that. It's from the International Energy Agency. As you can see outlined there, the proportion of electricity generation, and indeed the absolute numbers as well, that will come from solar and wind, those variable sources, is going to massively increase. So we need that system flexibility to make sure that the lights stay on, and indeed that electricity keeps flowing, and that we're not polluting the atmosphere with yet more carbon. Again, hopefully none of that is news to you guys. It's just a useful reminder of the sheer scale that we're having to deal with. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So a question that we're often asked is, well, if there's obviously a compelling need, and if pump storage has been around for a long time, why isn't it being built more at scale? So to answer that question, we brought together a wide range of stakeholders a couple of years ago to form the International Forum on Pump Storage Hydropower. 80 plus stakeholders, government-led, IHA provided the secretariat, huge number of partners. And we've themed our work around 3 key working groups: markets and policies, sustainability, and then capabilities, costs, and innovation. And we've got leads from all of those groups actually on the call later on today on the panel discussion. And I'll give a quick summary now of the headline findings from some of those groups. So firstly, from policy and market frameworks, many of these findings will be applicable, of course, to other forms of technology too. So some of the key headlines there will include: make sure that you plan for your storage and flexibility needs now. We don't want to be in a position in 10, 20 years time where we've rolled out wind and solar at scale and then suddenly find it's difficult to keep the lights on without resorting to gas, for example. And then I guess really crucially, the one that I always like to point to is we've got to make sure that services are remunerated, which quite often isn't the case, believe it or not. So not for electricity generation, but for some of those ancillary grid services. And many markets around the world still don't pay for them, reflecting the legacy infrastructure, as it were. But then also you've got to give long-term price visibility to investors. We've seen how that works in markets such as offshore wind in Europe, where you've got a contract where your investor, your operator, your developer knows what they're going to get paid. They take the construction risk, and then they know what they're going to be paid over many years, decades in some cases. We really need to see those sorts of mechanisms in place for pump storage and for long duration energy more generally. Next slide, please, Rebecca. Sustainability, of course, is a hugely important issue for all types of infrastructure. And as the world gets more and more populous, as the world gets richer and richer, it's only going to become a bigger concern. So with the Sustainability Working Group led by EDF, we're able to take a deep dive into some of the key challenges around pump storage hydropower, and actually found that by tapping into the existing sustainability tools that are available for hydropower in particular, and of course for other technologies too, it's perfectly possible to implement, design, and operate pump storage assets in a way that is sustainable and is net positive for the planet. And the detailed report is available online from our website for that. Next slide, please, Rebecca. And then the final working group, capabilities, costs, and innovation. This one was led by Voith, and I should have said the markets and policy one was led by GE as well. The capabilities, costs, and innovation looked at a number of different aspects, comparisons with other technologies, and of course, innovation in pump storage hydropower. And we'll be hearing about some of that later on. There's actually a huge amount of interesting new things underway in the world of pump storage hydropower, notwithstanding the fact that it's a well-established technology. Again, all that information is available on our website if you want to learn more. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So this, just to give you an idea of the types of analysis that we undertook, this is a comparison looking at different types of storage technology over different timeframes, cost metrics, and so on. And as you can hopefully see there, without diving into all of the numbers, different technologies are suitable for different kind of services and uses. And we found pump storage is very competitive across many of those. And there will be situations, of course, where you want to deploy other technologies, for example, over much shorter time frames. All this information, again, on our website, if you need to see more information there. Next slide, please, Rebecca. And then I think this is the last one from me before handing over. Just a pointer to the XFlex Hydro initiative. So this is a European Union funded project. It's got a number of demonstrator projects, mostly pump storage. There is some conventional hydropower in there, but it's really to showcase what needs to happen with assets like hydropower to enable that energy transition, to enable the integration of wind and solar onto grids more easily, more cost effectively. The project is underway right now. There are demonstrators up and running, and it's going to complete next year, and there'll be major reports and recommendations published as part of that. And IHA is working with a wide range of partners on that to make sure that the findings are shared across the whole of the community. And again, I would suggest that for the things like the market recommendations, very, very applicable to a wide range of technologies, not just pump storage. Okay, next slide, please, Rebecca. I think that's it from the forum. So please do put questions in the chat, and if we get a chance, we'll come back to them. I think I'm now handing over to Hodart, who's an expert associate partner with McKinsey, leading their work on energy system flexibility and the knowledge partnership with the LDES Council. So Hodart, over to you.
Thank you, Alex, and great to be with you. I'll talk you through the Net Zero Power report, which we published at COP26. It'll be a brief 10 minutes, but hopefully you have a chance to refer to the longer report, which is online, and it's an 80-page report, so a real substantial piece of work. I'll introduce the role of long duration to get to full net zero power systems. So what do we think of when we think of duration, right? On let's say today's markets, we see pumped hydro and lithium-ion batteries being the majority of system flexibility, particularly those newer batteries being put in place are of only short duration. So most batteries are 2, 3, 4 hours. Increasingly, we see batteries that may play a longer duration role than 4 hours, but batteries play the short duration. Hydrogen is seen as a very long duration technology where you turn the excess electrons into hydrogen and then use turbines or fuel cells to produce power. So that would be for multi-week seasonal storage applications. And the question we answered within the Long Duration Energy Storage Council is there a different set of technologies that solve for the, let's say, call it 8 to 2 week or 150-hour duration period? Do we see an economic uptake of different technologies than lithium-ion, pumped hydro, and hydrogen? And the answer is yes. So that's interesting. Based on the modeling we've done and the benchmarking, we see long duration LDES being say economic technology to energy shift as well as provide systems stability services. Again, in our definition of LDES, we take a holistic view, tech agnostic, and also include pumped hydro in our thinking. Next page. The system flexibility we think of is not just power system flexibility, but it includes heat flexibility, hydrogen flexibility, and the sector coupling between power and hydrogen and power and heat. In our first report, we focused really on those technologies that provided power system flexibility, as well as the interaction with hydrogen production. The next report, which we're working on for COP27, is one that goes much more in detail to the power to heat coupling. But today's focus really on that power system flexibility, including costs, the amount of, let's say, deployment of long duration energy storage, and the business cases from different customer perspectives. Next page. How we model it is with something called the McKinsey Power Model. It includes all the different solar, wind, battery, hydrogen costs, also the transmission interconnection between regions. We have many different regions within, for example, the US or Europe. We also modeled Japan, Australia, India, so real good coverage of the global power system. We then introduced into, let's say, our traditional modeling, long duration energy storage. So we didn't have that in the past because we, apart from pumped hydro and hydrogen and batteries, we didn't really have an asset class describing some of those more novel long duration energy storage. So we introduced the first quartile from a benchmark, which we did with all the members of the LDES Council, and then asked ourselves the question, what if you would have such an asset available? Would you see that being deployed? We also constrained it to a net zero power system in developed countries in 2035 and net zero power systems in 2040 in developing countries. So by 2040, a net zero power system supporting a well below 2 degrees Celsius trajectory for decarbonization, as power needs to be about a decade ahead of the rest of the energy system. Maybe a question on nuclear, which was asked in the chat, right? So we have nuclear in our power model, and the answer that came out was not a nuclear heavy one. Of course, the inputs determine the outputs. So we use the nuclear, let's say current traditional view of nuclear capital costs. If you do see a significant drop in capital and OPEX, for example, with SMRs, then of course you could see a different answer coming out of the modeling. But based on the modeling and the input assumptions we have for nuclear, we did not see it becoming a large scale economic deployed decision. Next page. Then on the two types of services, so there's energy shifting services and grid services. Energy shifting services include, let's say, taking daytime energy, putting it to night, or taking days where you have lots of wind and putting it to days that you don't have much wind. We determined two different archetypes in long duration. So one is the intraday energy firming archetype. So that takes energy in a 24-hour period, being able to make that renewable energy for a 24-hour period. Then there's also the multi-day archetype, where it's a clean dispatchable capacity archetype. That multi-day, so 24 hours plus, quickly also becomes 3, 4, 5 days of duration in many locations. So you really see it playing almost a gas capacity role, but then a long duration energy capacity role. For the multi-week or seasonal durations, we see hydrogen still being the most effective low carbon technology. We also looked at other technologies, like, for example, biogas, CCS, but we concluded on the bio side that there is really an uptake in industry or marine, and therefore question how much of that would then come through in the power sector. We can talk more. Again, inputs determine outputs, so we do know that the modeling is always sensitive to the constraints you put in. On the grid services side, this is about the inertia provision, frequency ancillary services, or black start capabilities. Many of the LDES technologies, including pumped hydro, have those grid service capabilities. And as you remove gas and coal from the system, you'll start to need substitutes for those stability services. Next page. Many use cases are unlocked by LDES, not just energy shifting and grid services. These include the firming of renewable PPAs, which Studio will talk about more, the optimization of fixed infrastructure. So we saw that half of the societal benefits of deploying storage is in the fixed infrastructure. So 50% in the reduction of fuel costs and capacity needs, and the other 50% of value in the increased utilization of transmission and distribution grids. Lastly, there are the remote grids or industrial grids that are in remote locations that can be supported by LDES. Next page. We looked at all the different types of technologies, so not just the mechanical pumped hydro, but we introduced new chemical technologies, electrochemical technologies, and thermal technologies. By now, the LDES Council has 30 technologies across these categories, and we benchmark these technologies to understand what is their CapEx cost, their OPEX cost, their round trip efficiency. We then take the first quartile across the tech agnostic LDES benchmark to say, if this type of technology would exist, what would be the role of those technologies in a power system? And again, it's really important to take to understand that we took first quartile outlooks. The reason we think first quartile outlooks is appropriate is that capital will flow into those technologies that really have the highest potential for low cost and high efficiencies. And therefore taking a median outlook from a benchmark may be underestimating the potential of these technologies in energy systems. Next page. So here are those cost outlooks. In our modeling, we see costs coming down by 55 to 60% per kilowatt hour of capital deployed. So we see it coming down, for example, for a 12-hour system from $120 per kilowatt hour to roughly $60 to $70 per kilowatt hour for again for a 12-hour system. You also see the capital cost here for a 36-hour system. As I mentioned, there's these two archetypes. One is that intraday archetype, which is the blue, and the multi-day archetype, which is the green. You can see that the red shows the uptake of long duration energy storage over time. So this is the economic uptake based on our modeling, showing up to 400 gigawatts by 2030, 2.5 terawatts by 2040. So this is a $2 to $3 trillion opportunity in terms of capital deployment. Real significant ramp up beyond 2030 to get to fully decarbonized systems. But even between now and 2030, we see an equivalent capacity deployed that we see in hydrogen for electrolyzers, for example, right? 400 gigawatt is a already substantial deployment in the next decade. Next page. So how does this long duration energy storage, how does it work in a power system? So here's an example of a trace of our modeling where you can see on the y-axis the state of charge, on the x-axis a full year, so January to December. We follow the storage systems over multiple weeks and months so that you can see the actual least cost deployment of storage in an energy system. This is in 2040 in the New York ISO, so in the US, so fully decarbonized New York ISO, where we have 150-hour system, so a 7-day roughly duration system. The takeaway for this page is that the 7-day storage system doesn't just fulfill multi-day cycling, but it fulfills an intraday cycling, multi-day cycling, and multi-week cycling. So you see that actually this is a versatile storage system that doesn't just fulfill a multi-day role. So the question then is, what is the role of lithium ion in the intraday if you start to have these long duration energy storage systems deployed as well? Next page. What we see over time as the system goes towards zero carbon is that the duration of systems becomes higher and higher, right? So in the first decade, 80% of systems are an intraday firming, while in the second and third decade, we see the durations increasing to multi-day systems. So 80% of all of the energy storage deployed in 2040 is in a multi-day energy storage system, while about 50-50 of the capital is spent in the intraday and the multi-day. Next page. It's a global phenomenon. So we, as mentioned, modeled a number of regions. You can see that the outcome in each region is a bit different. So for example, Chile and Australia have on average lower duration system than US or Europe. You can see that by 2030, we see durations increasing to roughly 30 hours in the US and Europe. We see durations increasing to almost 100 hours in those systems by 2040 on average, while in Australia and Chile, we see durations up to roughly 24 hours. Next page. How does this then look like? We have on the left-hand side modeled system without LDES. So we did the McKinsey Power Model, and we didn't include LDES as an archetype. While on the right-hand system, we introduced the first quartile of long-duration energy storage from our benchmarking. And you can see on the left-hand side, hydrogen turbines and lithium-ion batteries fulfilling a significant role in flexibility to integrate solar or wind. On the right-hand side, you see long-duration energy storage technologies, again, tech agnostic based on that first quartile. That reduces lithium ion by roughly 70% and hydrogen turbines by roughly 60%. So you can see the bridge of long duration energy storage between lithium ion and hydrogen. Maybe I'll talk you a bit through those cost dynamics and then also hand over back to Julia. Next page. So when we look at costs, right there, all of the costs of energy storage in the numerator and all of the discharge electricity in the denominator, that gets you to an equivalent cost to generate electricity with a storage system, similar to an LCOE metric for solar or wind. Next page. So how does that then look like as you increase the duration beyond 8 hours? You can see the lithium ion costs going up over time because the more battery packs you add, the higher the levelized cost of storage becomes. Well, because the energy storage costs of LDES systems are much lower than the energy storage costs of lithium ion per kilowatt hour added, you see that the slope of LDES is much lower, and there's this band now, competitive band, where LDES beyond 8 hours is significantly competitive versus lithium ion deployment beyond 8 hours. Next page. So then on the hydrogen side, so if we increase the duration beyond 24 hours to 150 hours or more, you can see that hydrogen at roughly $1.50 per kilogram has an LCOS of roughly $220 per megawatt hour, or the equivalent cost to generate with a hydrogen turbine would be about $220 per megawatt hour, that would be similar to a long duration energy storage system of 150 to 200 hours duration. So you start to see that up to 150 hours of duration for hydrogen costs above $1 per kilogram, you see long duration energy storage being competitive to hydrogen for roughly 1 week cycling. Next page. Just to end it, the report itself, again, 80 pages for you to read through, includes the business cases from different customer perspectives, including developers, integrated utilities, mines, islands, and for each of these different archetypes, different value drivers are available, whether it's firming, capacity, energy arbitrage, CO2 saving. So each of these are available to different stakeholders. In our regulatory report, policy options, that will be published, we'll be looking at these value drivers in much more detail. Takeaway is that not every market design supports monetization of storage benefits. And as you try to de-risk or at least create opportunities to have NPV positive business cases, you need to increase the number of value drivers available to these users of energy storage. So with that, thanks for this. And Julia will talk us through more of the 24/7 clean PPAs.
Thanks, Hodart. And as you were just mentioning about de-risking, I think the 24/7 PPAs are a great project to de-risk for projects for investment and developers, and they provide a reliable revenue stream. So if we can go to the next slide, please. What's also great today too is just to work in collaboration about the importance of education outreach, because there's so much is moving so fast. It's really important to kind of see there's so much data available to start influencing various policies and tools. So we'll just go over kind of what is a 24/7 clean PPA, what is a quality assessment framework, just making sure that this is something that works well and is transparent and the criteria is understood, and looking at different between corporate and system level emissions impacts, and then what is a path forward for implementation. Next slide. Thanks. So what's really exciting is just the momentum already in the last 5 years to see how much demand for renewable PPAs, power purchase agreements, has been for both wind and solar. And you can see in 2017, looking at 6 and then going up per year to over 31 with Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and the Americas. So it's really exciting to see that we've already made a lot of advancement, and we can build upon this and build upon this know-how to really kind of bring in the additional benefits of a 24/7 clean PPA. Next slide, please. Thanks, Rebecca. So what we noticed and why it was so important for our members and to get together to really dig into what's an additional solution was to look at the 24/7 clean PPAs of filling in these gaps. So if you're looking at a day where you already have the PPA, you're still meeting some of the hours because you don't have wind or sun online with fossil fuels traditionally. So we wanted to realize that if you really truly want to have 100% emission-free grid and you want to have renewables on 24/7, then we need to have a tool to really kind of promote this. And so we're really trying to capture this every hour of every day with 24/7 clean PPA, and then demonstrating the value add of long duration energy storage, filling in these gaps. Next slide. So as we do this, I'm really trying to do that hourly time matching. So if you're looking at renewables generating and maybe that it's either overproduced or underpowered, you want to make sure that storage can come on and hold it for multi-day, seasonal. And as you're doing this, and you can actually then look at bringing back in the clean energy that's been provided by long duration storage back to the grid, so we can have that every hour of every day match. So then you don't have the emissions increase because you're having those gaps. Instead, you have a very clean 24/7 every hour measured by the emissions reducing and the fact that you actually have clean energy powering the grid. Next slide. So when we were starting to talk about, well, how do we make this come to fruition? What are the barriers we need to overcome? What's preventing this? Cost is one of the number one items. And so, right now cost might be higher, but as technology improves and the diversity of long duration comes on the market, and we scale up, costs will decline. The second point was also about carbon accounting incentives. How are we looking at different protocols for greenhouse gas emission protocols? And is it truly understood and transparent? And then as we're trying to scale up, are we having the flexible technologies that are provided? Are we looking at the diversity of long duration energy storage and the new innovations that are happening within pumped hydro, for example? And then how do we make sure that we have a kind of a global accountability set up so that we can look at certificates, maybe an award system, and kind of we'll highlight, something of gold, silver, platinum, just different targets to meet so that you can have, the metrics met and understood, and then you're having that resolution that's understood by all. And then also, as you're doing this, kind of creating the standardization of the clean PPA and getting the quality so that you are ensuring that you are getting the emissions reductions, and it's not just staying at a level of 60 to 70%, you're actually meeting the 80, 90, 100% emissions reductions. Next slide, please. So when we're doing this, and I think it's also building upon all the great work that we did with McKinsey and the members, and the first report of showing the value add of levelized cost of electricity and levelized cost of storage, and how to bring together the analysis of CapEx and really understand that the looking at the cost and the curves that you saw earlier in Hodard's presentation about the value add at that kind of sweet spot with 80%, of kind of the emissions reduction and long duration energy storage coming on, the 8 hours and plus, again, the value out of long duration energy storage and the cost coming down. And then how we're looking at the traditional PPAs and how clean PPAs can really start bringing in the benefit for both the off-taker, the customer, and the developer. Next slide. Thanks. So we hinted on this earlier. You saw this in Hodard's slide, just about the fact that at first there's a lot of this perception that the costs are rising, but again at that sweet spot about 80%, where you have long duration energy storage becomes essential to reducing costs on the grid, because it does start to level out. It provides the diversity of the benefit, because we can meet every hour of that day, not just 2 to 4 hours. We can meet 8+ multi-day and seasonal. Next slide, please. So we mentioned earlier, one of the barriers is really kind of having a standardized component. And so our group decided that it'd be really important to have, kind of an entry level incentive. There's already been a lot of great work on PPAs, but how do you then take it to the next level? How can you reach the silver, the gold, the platinum stages, where you are really matching the hourly demand and you're meeting the emissions targets? You're demonstrating that you have 100% renewables online 24/7, and you're giving that flexibility that we've all highlighted is so critical to a clean energy grid that's truly performing well and giving the reliable services that we all need. And so this kind of assessment that we put forward, has a lot of benefits to, again, accountability, transparency, and just kind of understood across the board metric system that we can really help use to promote the enormous value out of 24/7 clean PPAs. Next slide, please. So, for example, we're looking at a variety of different business cases, and there's more in the report, but we pulled out California here just to look at the cost delta between the lowest and highest quality. And then you can also see that the importance of long duration energy storage, again, bringing down the cost. The green line is showing you the platinum reaching that 100% emissions target. Then you have the gold about 90%, and then you have the silver about 80%. You can see, as mentioned earlier, just the significant cost savings with having the 24/7 each hour met with the supply and demand of clean energy. So again, being able to provide that for a multitude of hours and the seasonal benefits that are so critical. Next slide, please. And so one other element too that I've been highlighting on is that we need to be able to track, and we have that accreditation system that will help. We really want to validate that we are really reducing emissions. And so as we're doing this, from the existing average today, and then what you can see also from a solar PPA to a wind PPA, you can get to 50 to 70% emissions. But if you really want to get to the full decarbonization and meeting our net zero targets, we need to get to 100. And so what does that look like? And then using the system of the known certificates of silver, gold, and platinum to really start bring down costs and also bring down emissions. So again, the value out of long duration energy storage, providing this matching service to really, again, meet and provide grid stability and flexibility. Next slide, please. So another aspect too, looking at the different modeling and different components, really showing that this isn't just kind of checking the first kind of initial boxes. We're looking at and the entire portfolio aggregation, looking at the variability of renewable energy systems, looking at the weather patterns and what's been changing in the intensity of weather, looking at the location, as mentioned. Not every project can fit in a variety of different geographies. And so again, noting the diversity of long duration energy storage and some of the new innovations in pumped hydro, for example, that give you some additional flexibility. And again, just the supply and demand correlation for the justifying the need for storage and looking at the overall CapEx and cost equations. And so, as we mentioned earlier, we need this whole pie to be increased so that we can all make sure that we're participating to bring down costs, but also looking at what happens with lithium ion in partnership with long duration. And then also looking at the different cost characteristics for each types of technology, trying to promote all the different avenues, but again, looking in the different metrics for the diversity added. For the next slide, please. So what's also really exciting is that this isn't just for one type of customer. There is so much opportunity here to build on the existing current PPA system and then evolving it into the clean PPAs, where buyers can take it, a huge element that can really help in procurement efforts, making sure that you're justifying and validating emissions targets reductions. There's a bunch of different ways then to move from silver to platinum and really promoting that to meet your sustainability goals. As a clean PPA seller, really making sure that you're promoting how you're truly decarbonizing power supply, looking at diversity of technologies that are products that are available to you, and then looking at how long-duration energy storage provides the flexibility, and especially in capital allocation, showing again that cost curve where after 8 hours, you have long-duration energy storage providing that stability and the cost reduction. And then also just really seeing the entire ecosystem that we're really trying to do with education outreach, of promoting these different tools that we can use to give you the flexibility. It's really exciting to see that there are new mechanisms to really account for and be known and transparent for carbon accounting. And again, the quality standards that come with this, for the justification. So we're not greenwashing, but we're actually demonstrating the value add of the tools in the toolkit, so we can demonstrate that long-duration energy storage, working with this one of many tools, 24/7 clean PPAs, can help us decarbonize in our global economies. Next slide, please. And so now I'll hand it over to Jordi to talk a little bit more about the financing platform and what Mackenzie's been building with the Long Duration Energy Storage Council on something that's really exciting about different types of promotions that we can do and networking to really bring forward the needed scale for promoting long duration energy storage. So Jordi.
Great, thank you very much, Julia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So I've been working with the LDES Council on which is called financing vehicles. That is basically two aspects to drive the uptake of long duration energy storage technologies. The first one being a platform, which is simply put a matchmaking platform for not just technology providers and customers to meet, but players across the whole ecosystem. And secondly, an equity fund, which we currently foresee to be $500 million. And both together, we think could really drive the uptake of LDES technologies in line with the power system needs as set out by Gerard. For now, I'll just be talking about the platform itself. Next slide, please. So this platform, as said, aims to bring together all the stakeholders across the LDES ecosystem. In essence, it's a global marketplace. The starting point of functionalities is really the matchmaking. Currently, the LDES industry is in its infancy. To a large extent, it has a low visibility on opportunities that are being matured from initial design phase to actual execution. Technologies are coming up in many places, all going through the different TRL levels. But again, it isn't fully transparent to everyone everywhere what the opportunities and possibilities are. And with this platform, an online marketplace or matchmaking platform, we want to provide more visibility into the market, but also actually connecting the parties to realize their opportunities with the best players, basically. Beyond matchmaking, we also foresee a role for third-party services. So you can imagine that matchmaking is only the first part of realizing your project. As soon as you have players in place and you're executing, there's of course many third-party services that you can think to add on as well, like reinsurance and technical diligence and in partner selection and the like. We start with the members of the LDES Council, which is close to 60 currently, and our ambition is to grow this platform not just with the council members, but beyond that. And we have big ambitions to reach a much bigger membership within this year. Next slide, please. Then a brief outlook on what we can expect beyond this. So we're developing this marketplace purely for LDES technologies currently, but of course there's many more green tech industries that are currently in their infancy and can have use of a similar matchmaking platform similarly. So we can foresee that beyond LDES, there's multiple ways to apply this, but for now the focus is purely on LDES. Next slide, please. Great. So to go a little bit deeper into the players that we've built this for, there's basically 5 user archetypes that we foresee to benefit most from this, but we also recognize that there's players beyond this that we do plan to include after the initial phase of launching. Now the customers like Rio or Google, we've just put them here. These are just illustrative examples, but I think they're very good examples. Rio with their mining sites spread across the globe, they're all off-grid sites, currently powered by diesel gen or directly or as backup. They need to change in how they power their sites. And the same you can see, of course, for the data centers that are spread globally from multiple players, not just Google, of course. Here we can see the demand for LDES technologies. The other players, so basically here number 2, 3, 4, and 5, the project developers, investors, tech providers, and OEMs, they were basically the providers of all these, responding to the pool created by the customers. What we've mapped here is basically what we call the user journeys, for us to really understand if we would make such a matchmaking platform, what should it fulfill? What are the needs of the different archetypes as they go from beginning of their opportunity or exploring for different opportunities to actually matching and then towards project realization. And this is basically, this underlies the platform as we've actually built. And just some example or exemplary names here. And as you can see, the matches are not just in one direction between 2 players, but there's multiple interactions between all the different stakeholders here. That's why we think a platform like this, creating visibility in all these multi-directional interactions can be super powerful. Next slide, please. Great, so what I will do now briefly is show you a preview of what the platform actually looks like. And Rebecca, if you mind, I will share my screen. Okay, so what you'll see here is the platform as it is. We've previewed this prototype to about 50 senior industry players a week and a half ago at the Green Business Building Summit in Stockholm. And what you see here is about to go live in about 2-3 weeks. We expect this to be available for players beyond the LDES Council. Part of this platform is public, and the role of that is purely educational, linking people to the insights and the research of the LDES Council, but also educating on what are the key players, what are their roles, but also what is the role of long-duration energy storage in the future power systems. Then beyond the public part, we have a private section where I would be logged in as here an example industrial customer. As a company, I would configure all my needs. But more importantly, at a project level, the demands can be indicated by any player. So here I've put a hyperscale data center in the Netherlands as an example. Here I would indicate what I am looking for as an industrial customer. When is my foreseen data commissioning? What kind of use cases of my long duration energy storage tech am I expecting? What is the duration I'm actually looking at? What is the capacity? And after my initial build, am I looking for scalability on site as well? So here I'll be able to indicate all the stuff I'm looking for an investor, tech provider, and project developer. Very open to technologies. So this is where I would post my needs. Then at a companies level, I can either match for specific companies that provide that are a specific archetype by a specific region and technology, and here I'll be able to reach out to each of them. of course, they can also respond to my project specifically based on the needs that I have indicated, and through them I would get in touch. So this platform at a company level, let's see. So here's a number of matched companies that I've got in touch with, and this basically works in a way like LinkedIn or jokingly put a dating site. Both companies need to reach out to each other, or the one does first, the other one accepts, and only when both companies agree to get in touch, you will see that that is actually possible to secure or to speak in a secure environment before sharing any personal details like phone numbers or emails. So this platform really looks at providing visibility into the LDES market, connecting people based on project-specific needs, and they can get in touch at a company level and start to communicate. And basically from there, currently all the conversations are taken offline, simply to keep the platform simple and effective, without yet moving into NDAs and an RFQ or RFP stage, which we could see as a future opportunity for a platform like this. Let me stop sharing there. Rebecca, would you mind going back to the presentation? So that is a little preview on the platform as we currently have it. As said, this is a prototype preview, and we expect to go live in about 2-3 weeks. We've received very positive feedback when we launched in Stockholm a week and a half ago. We're currently incorporating that and building this out. And of course, for the IHA, that would logically plug in here as well, right? It's part of the mechanical storage and the visibility of the opportunity landscape. Great. That is it for me. Let me give it back to our team.
Thanks, Geordie. Thank you so much, and thank you to the previous speakers. So we've heard some really interesting innovations, lots of data and details that have come up there. We'll move now to a panel discussion and Q&A, and just as a reminder, you can certainly submit questions via the chat function. We've had quite a few questions coming through already. So what we'll do here, as you can hopefully see everyone's names up, we've got a really high quality panel. I'll introduce each of the panelists as I go around with some initial questions, and I will try and capture all your questions that have come through. Some have been answered already in the chat, but please do keep them coming. So first of all, I'm going to turn to David Harvard. Now, David joined GE Hydro. Hopefully you've all heard of GE in 2009, as currently the head of product marketing, with a global responsibility for the full hydro offering, including rehabilitation and service activities, pump storage and conventional generation. And I'm sure many of you will have seen him before. He's a regular participant in hydro and energy conferences, both as a presenter and a panelist. So David, welcome. Can I kick off by asking you, so pump storage hydro is a well-established technology. As I said before, we've got over 160 gigawatts globally, with even more in the pipeline, but it can be sometimes seen as a bit old-fashioned. There is, however, a tremendous amount of innovation going on to support its evolving role, in particular to enable wind and solar. What developments have you seen recently that really excite you as a practitioner in this space?
Yeah, thanks, Alex, and hi, everyone. There's a lot to be excited about, particularly in the last 10 years. There's been a lot of development made on making assets more flexible and more reactive. If I give you some examples, it's to have, for example, a wider operating range in generation mode. And then when we're in pumping or power absorption mode, with the invention of variable speed, the key feature of that is actually to bring flexibility even when we're pumping. So a lot more flexibility in terms of operating ranges, making machines as well a lot more reactive. We now have machines which are able to start, which are reversible machines, so very well known in the industry, able to start and get to full power in less than 60 seconds. And even switch from pumping, so absorbing power, full power, to then providing full power in less than 60 seconds as well. So a lot going on in terms of flexibility. It's been mentioned several times. It's a buzzword, let's say, in terms of grid services and so on. So a lot's been done on flexibility, operating ranges. And I would just add as well about cycling of pump storage, starting and stopping many times in a day. Typically, pump storage can do that without too much wear and tear, but we are seeing as we go forwards that more and more customers are wanting 6 to 10 to 15 starts and stops per day. And we're able to design to that and give them the right lifetime. But I'm sure many of you know that cycling is something that many storage media struggle to do. Whereas in fact, for hydro, pump storage hydro, it's something that we can manage.
Thanks, David. And that kind of need for cycling, is that reflective of the increased demands being put on grids by wind and solar in particular, or is that driven by other factors?
Exactly. It's what you mentioned before, Alex. It's the whole fact that we've now decoupled pump storage from fossil plants and from nuclear plants. You mentioned it at the beginning. That's really why they were first built in the 70s and 80s in many cases. They're no longer coupled to fossil fuels and nuclear, which had a very steady operation range as well. They're now having to balance wind and solar. So they're now coupling to wind and solar, which are more volatile, and therefore our machines also need to be more reactive.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. I'm going to turn now to Stephen Croce. Stephen is the CEO of Re-Energize. Hope I pronounced that correctly, Stephen, which is a disruptive startup bringing innovation to pumped hydro with its high-density hydro innovation. Stephen's got a track record in innovation, commercialization, management across diverse business sectors from energy to architecture and design. And prior to his current role, he was a commercial director for 2 wind turbine manufacturing businesses and has been involved with entrepreneurialism in electric vehicles, tidal, solar, wide range of markets. So Stephen, building on what we were just discussing with David, moving on the traditional pump storage hydro arrangements with those 2, if you like, normal reservoirs, one at the top of the hill, one at the bottom. We know there are many alternative configurations and technologies out there under development and in the early stages. What do you see as the biggest opportunities arising?
So thanks very much, Alex, for that introduction, longer than I was expecting. Well, I think where we see the innovation coming, and it's really what we've been trying to do at Re-Energize, is to address some of the challenges that traditional pumped hydro face, which is around the speed of time to consent and construct. And the challenge with that is, with a rapidly changing power market, it's difficult to get contracts over that long period of time where the energy project takes such a long period to build. But then there's also things around environmental and social issues around flooding valleys. So the challenge we see for pumped hydro is, if the energy transition is really going to happen in the next 35 years, can pumped hydro deliver at that sort of scale? Earlier on, it was mentioned that around 5 gigawatts was built a year. But if you're talking about 1.5 terawatts of energy storage needed by 2050, or that sort of order of magnitude, then pumped hydro on its own would take somewhere in the order of 300 years. So the innovation is needed to find solutions that can go much, much faster. And that's really what we've been trying to do at Re-Energize with our solution, high density hydro, which is smaller projects, enabling projects to be built on smaller hills where you don't need the water abstraction in the same way, and to vastly increase the number of sites available. And to us, that's really the challenge that traditional hydropower has, is really just the speed and how fast can you scale it. We don't have 300 years, we have 35. And I think this is where some of the other solutions that can be built much more quickly in more locations, closer to the existing grid, closer to renewable energy, closer to those with the high power demands, are really going to make a significant difference. And that's what we're trying to achieve at Re-Energize.
Thanks, Stephen. I mean, I think the challenges with deploying at scale for all technologies are pretty brutal when we look at the headline numbers. we need to throw the kitchen sink and everything else, not just everything as well as the kitchen sink at decarbonisation. It's actually a nice segue into our next panelist, Dennis Albrecht. Dennis works at EDF. He's the head of the technology, head of technology and the deputy technical director in the Hydro Engineering Centre. He's also a member of the executive board of the French National Committee on Dams and Reservoirs and acts as a chairman on the technical committee of global climate change, dams and reservoirs at ICOLD, who I'm sure the International Commission on Large Dams. Dennis was very actively involved in the Pump Storage Forum, and in particular on the sustainability sides of things. And Stephen, you mentioned there some of those challenges with permitting and so on, and that's something we've been working really hard on with a wide range of stakeholders to make sure that the process is fit for purpose for hydropower. So Dennis, turning to you, how important do you think it is that the application of those independently developed sustainability tools and standards to secure that kind of wider stakeholder and policy buy-in for pump storage in particular, but are there also lessons that can be learned for the wider long duration storage community?
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, behind the term sustainability, people and stakeholders may have very different understanding and meaning. It's a global term which covers different kind of aspects: economics, of course, environment, social, and even safety aspects. So it is thus very essential to develop recognized common framework and metrics to get a common vision on how you assess sustainability for storage and flexibility systems. As you said, within the International Forum for Pump Storage Hydro, we have worked together with a very wide range of stakeholders from the industry, from academics, research organizations, from NGOs, energy agencies, and the framework we have established and which is presented in the report you have mentioned earlier has been organized in a three-level approach from global to local. First, the first level is a system level. The idea is first to determine what are the conditions to make the system becomes sustainable. It means define what are the storage, flexibility, and ancillary services that a given power system needs to meet the net zero transition objective. It's a kind of definition of what should be the system evolution trajectory. The second level is the technology options assessment. Given the needs, what are the technologies available depending on their characteristics that could be best positioned to respond to these needs? And in some situations, we can imagine a mix and a bunch of different technologies and solutions to respond to these needs. And the third level is the project optimization. Of course, PSH has some impacts or positive aspects directly connected to the technology, but also to siting. And of course, we must look carefully at the sustainability conditions when implementing reservoirs in a territory, in a hydrographic system. And so here we have tools to define what could be the best sustainable PSH project to avoid, minimize, or mitigate social and environmental aspects. And we have tools, existing tools, which were developed for conventional hydropower, which are totally applicable for a PSH project. And I refer to the Hydropower Sustainability Protocol. It was developed about 15 to 12 years ago. It has its own governance. It's an independent corp of criteria and which enable to demonstrate how a PSH project can be considered as sustainable. The last point, perhaps two last points. due to the territorial, I mean, a PSH project is not invisible in the landscape, of course. And so you have also local benefits. So in sustainability, when you have a reservoir, you could imagine multi-purpose activities and multi-purpose benefits. It could be one-time benefits, it could be permanent benefits, for instance, for water sports, recreational use, flood protection, these kind of things. And this must be integrated in the sustainability assessment. And the last comment would be about the carbon footprint of storage systems. We started in our sustainability report of the forum to provide first elements to understand how carbon footprint of PSH project could be understood, both for the construction phase, the operation phase, and but we think definitely that there is room to go further on that aspect and to work, for instance, with the World Resources Institute to have a global understanding on how carbon footprint of storage technologies could be assessed, and then to compare storage technologies with recognized criteria.
Thanks, Dennis. I think that's, reflecting on my background in energy more broadly, and I'm sure many of you on the call as well will understand that those sustainability concerns, framed broadly, can affect different technologies in different ways, and people can be caught out. I've seen fantastic wind projects that have been cancelled or massively delayed because the appropriate consideration wasn't given earlier on to impacts which are unique to wind, whether it's bird life or marine mammals in some cases. And of course, hydropower, we've had that experience over many years, and I would I always urge anyone who's interested in trying to stop climate change and decarbonize power systems to really think about all aspects of sustainability, because if we don't start to do that now, there's a risk that projects will be massively delayed. We really need later on. I wonder if Julia, I could just quickly turn to you just for that kind of slightly broader consideration of technologies across the piece. Do you have any reflections on how the kind of wider long duration storage community might start to think about sustainability and really position it front and center in their thinking?
Well, thanks, Alex. I think it's great to be here with all the panelists and really appreciate the systems viewpoint with the local and just kind of this nexus of the public-private partnership. And I think what we're all trying to do is show that there's a huge value add here, but there's just a lack of education and know-how about what we're all trying to do together. And there's some typical assumptions that we're trying to either break or build on, because there is this know-how of existing technologies, but also what we're bringing with a diversity of new long-duration energy storage to meeting societal needs, meeting local needs, providing community benefits that can really be seen from a variety of different viewpoints. So again, it's that education outreach that we're really trying to build with all this fact-based information from around the world to show that this can be done. And I think that's what's exciting, is the building momentum of how valuable long-duration energy storage is and how critical pumped hydro is in the discussions and what it is to long-duration energy storage. But again, just putting all these pieces together to show that where we're presenting this as something that we can achieve together.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julia. I'll turn now to Klaus Kruger, who's a senior expert for plant safety and energy storage solutions at Voith. He's gained professional experience in several national, international thermal and hydropower plant projects, and is a member of the executive board of the European Association for the Storage of Energy since 2017. And Klaus was very heavily involved in our pump storage in the international forum. So Klaus, if I might ask you, for many years, the business case for pump storage, and by extension, long duration storage more generally, was relatively straightforward. And we heard David earlier referring to that, and I talked about it at the beginning. But as those electricity markets are getting more complex, it's clear that we need innovative policy and market solutions. And I put some of those in the chat in response to a question earlier. What key policy examples have you seen that you think are enabling or will enable the deployment of more pump storage at scale?
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everybody. Well, you were referring first to the arbitrage business, which was dominating the revenue streams of pump storage. So assuming, let's say, a price spread of $40 to $50 per megawatt hour, you would need to refinance such a new pump storage about 1,000 hours per year of full turbine load utilization, which was actually in the central part of Europe not possible in the last 10 years. This means you cannot rely only on these revenue streams in future. So in a deregulated market, you have to look for a revenue stacking. So this means where the flexibility options of a pumped hydro can help you to jump between the different revenue streams. In an ideal world, for a deregulated market, so PSH would earn money with, let's say, by 1/3 by capacity payments. The second third would be ancillary services coming out from the electricity market trading, like fast balancing energy, intraday, the spot market, and redispatch, which are currently the main revenue streams, at least in Central Europe. And the last third of revenues, they could come from the already mentioned arbitrage business. Now, the world is not only a deregulated world regarding electricity. We have a lot of non or poor regulated electricity markets, sometimes without clear remuneration schemes for ancillary services. In this case, long-term PPAs could help as an enabler to new PSH projects. So such an example was the Pinapuram pump storage in India, which was awarded 2020, where 25 years PPA contract secured 900 of the 1,200 megawatts of this pump storage. And they are utilizing two tariffs. It's quite simple. It is one weighted average tariff and a quoted peak tariff, and 6 hours per day related to this peak tariff, which is in the morning slot and the evening slot where they have this peak demand. And developer was Greenco, who is also here with us in the panel.
Thanks, Klaus. So with that, that's a nice segue. We'll turn to Parveen Nanda, who's at Greenco, a very large Indian renewables developer. Parveen's been working on decarbonisation and net zero emissions in Greenco. He's worked on 8 mega PSPs with 100 gigawatt hours of energy storage capacity, which are currently under various stages of development and implementation, and very experienced, 35 years experience in the energy sector. So Mr. Nanda, if I can turn to you then, just to maybe build on what Klaus was saying, just talking about some of the innovation in the Indian space in terms of policy development that's helping to accelerate pump storage development.
Yeah, Alex. Hello, everybody. Alex, in Indian context, the situation is slightly different than the other countries, because in our case, the markets are not yet fully developed to take care of the pump storage projects or long duration energy storage, because the remuneration, the ancillary services are not remunerative, and the revenue streams are not available for them. Arbitrage to some extent is existing, but the storage requirements are quite huge at this stage, because a lot of discoms, governments, they have a lot of renewable energy available to them, which they want to time shift and use for a proper peaking times, with a cost advantage as well, and curtailment, reduction in curtailment and other things as well. And so the trend in Indian side has been that first point was to make this pump storage or long duration energy storages look slightly lucrative or implementable or sustainable. So on that front, the government of India has came up with a lot of policies on that. Like one of them is they have treated the energy to be drawn through the pump storage projects to be under hydro purchase obligations, HPOs, like the certificates we have for REC, renewable certificates. Then the interstate transmission, because we don't have co-located renewable energy locations and PSP locations, whereas in our case in Pinapuram we have that co-located project, but it's not the case everywhere. So there again, the interstate transmission charges, they have given advantage. A waiver is given that you can take renewable power from any location and you can give it to any location where you are not charged on interstate transmission charges. Then there is another aspect of budgetary support also, because to encourage hydro, they had come up with a policy of infrastructural budgetary support. That benefit has been extended to the PSPs also in this case. So, and now the government is coming up with the storage policy, which will be technology and location and the cycles agnostic kind of thing, which will be paving the way for the long duration energy storages to come in India. But on the second part of it, if we look at the marketability point of it, we have, as Klaus said, that we have already one long-term PPA for our Pinnapuram project, wherein we have a supply of peak power and the other daytime power separately. We have two separate rates operating for that. Now another, there is a one PSU, central PSU in India, which has come up with a storage tender now, because they have a lot of RE available to their side. So they want to time shift their RE, or they want to optimally utilize their RE so that they don't have curtailment, etc., and turn it to a revenue stream. But another thing which is majorly coming up in India is now on RE-RTC. I think that is where the long duration energy storage is going to be a key point. Not alone in India, I think all across the world it's going to be main thing. What I feel is as an enabler for this long duration energy to go towards the renewable energy around the clock scenario, I think the way forward which can be there is, like we have net zero C targets 2040, 2050, like that. I think we can have a base load replacement by RE. Can be one kind of target which should be there for every country or every utility to keep. So they are replacing the base load with the RE for the non-RE power. So that percentage of base load replacement may be 10% every year, 5% every year, 3% every year kind of situation, which will definitely enable the space to be created for development of long duration energy storages. I think that is a part on the policy framework, if it's taken, that will create a situation where long-term planning or long-term development of long-duration energy storages will become lucrative as well as inevitable for everybody to do. So I think the base load reduction or base load replacement by RE-RTC can be one policy enabler which can be enabled or created at this level. Thank you.
Absolutely, thanks, Mr. Nanda. Actually, we can't see you. Can you put your camera on? We missed you. We saw you at the beginning, but we missed you there. If I can also just ask a quick follow-up. So, has India announced yet its long-term targets in terms of capacity for pumped storage hydropower? Because we heard some months ago that they were on the brink of announcing some quite ambitious numbers.
As of now, there is no final numbers which have come out from the government side, but there's a lot of work going on. I think shortly we are expecting those numbers to come. But short-term number is that we are going to have around 200 to 300 gigawatt hours, 100 gigawatt hour storage, maybe by around 2030. That's a preliminary assessment which has been done by the statutory agencies, but that has been done not exactly on what exactly we intend to achieve on that. Like I said, the RE-RTC and the industrial component of RE-RTC is another aspect which they are looking into. And there is one major segment which I just want to point out here is there's another 60 to 70 gigawatt of captive DG generation which is there in the industries because of non-reliability of the continuous power, and that's an area where I think the key replacement will happen. The moment we are going for RE-RTC and we are as Julia said, the quality, the platinum, which we are talking quality band, that kind of scenario comes when we have that serving of the PPA to an extent of 100% by RE-RTC. I think that another 60-70 gigawatt of the diesel captive genset will go off the hook, and automatically the requirement of and targets which government are trying to produce will have that numbers incorporated into that. So my personal assessment is in India, somewhere around 30 to 40 gigawatt of the pump storage projects might be a requirement at the end of 2030.
Which is fantastic, obviously, for developers in this space, and hopefully will feed across to other forms of technology as well. And we've seen with the numbers coming out of China. I don't know if everybody has heard some of the latest numbers, but we're talking hundreds of gigawatts in the next decade of storage, and I'm sure there'll be space for many other technologies, as is always the case with China, putting everything to the absolute max. I think we've got time certainly for one more speaker, and I'm going to turn to Michael Bergmark. Michael is a senior product and project manager from Stockholm at SENS, where he oversees projects on pump storage hydro solutions in mines. So which is a really interesting space. I know every time that I've sat down with an energy minister or senior official recently and talked about pump storage and casually mentioned mines, they're very excited. I think they automatically see the photo shoot with the hat, in a kind of former mining community. So it's definitely got political clout. So Michael, looking ahead to the future, where do you see the greatest opportunity for growth, both for pump storage, but also for long duration storage more generally? And, whether from a geographic basis, or, and we just talked about China and India, or indeed in terms of innovation as well.
Well, what you can see is from the report that was mentioned before by Godard is that we will need to see a massive development of long duration energy storage through all sectors and in all geographical places. It's not only the 50 gigawatts that needs to be installed within of long duration technology. We also need to have a massive amount of energy, and pump storage and other long duration energy storage technologies are what will help this transition happen. And you can see that by 2040, around 10% of all energy that is going to be produced will be produced through long duration energy storage. Then you can read this in the report. So this shows that there's not only one place and there's not only one part of the system where long duration energy storage will be needed. We see also the massive acceleration of electrification in this system that needs, in Sweden at least, we can read every year new long-term projections of electricity need will be increased every year, because more and more sectors of the industry will have to be electrified in order to decarbonize. So there is not really one sector that needs this electricity, this storage, but rather the whole system. And that means geographical as well. When we look at mines, as you mentioned, as you say, I also see this when I talk about our solution. It's everybody gets very interested because they see the potential of reutilizing old facilities, but also helping other communities of the mining communities revive and continue living after the mine is is closed down. So this solution works well for both these communities, but as well as off-grid mines. You mentioned before that Rio Tinto is looking to decarbonize their system or their electricity or their production, and this is a perfect way to use their own facility in a very sustainable way to decarbonize their production. They install electricity production from solar and wind, and then they have long duration energy storage. We will have to see the solutions from all around the system to both decarbonize the off-grid production and the off-grid industries, but also as well as the on-grid industries. And pumped hydro is one of the solutions that will have to be further developed as they do in China, but also innovated as Re-Energize or our solution. But long duration in energy storage in general, that will need for the solution to work in as a an organism and to be able to provide a non-fossil energy system in the future and a decarbonized energy system.
Thank you. I think that's a fantastic point to end the panel discussion on. We need lots of it. We need it as soon as possible, and it needs to be on grid. It needs to be off grid. It needs to support the just transition to help people who moving away from fossil fuel jobs who need to be supported and brought with us. But there's a huge amount of potential there. Thank you so much to the panelists for your insightful comments. I wish we had more time to speak, but I'm going to hand back to Julia for some concluding remarks. And thank you everybody for certainly taking the time to listen to us today. And Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Alex. And thanks again for co-hosting this with us. I look forward to many more partnerships and opportunities, and also appreciate all the great insights from the panel. When hearing so much about pump storage and all the lessons learned and the expertise over decades, it really does demonstrate how, this is one of many technologies has really provided this reliability and this know-how to give that trusted element that is so critical. And as we're growing within the council, we've really brought together our members and expertise to really build on this shared lessons learned. And we've just published this 24/7 Clean PPA report. We're working on a net zero mining report, and if you're interested, love to work with you. We're working on transmission distribution optimization. You heard earlier, just all the market opportunities from the net zero power report we launched at COP26. We have an upcoming net zero heat report that we're going to be launching at COP27. We're doing a lot of benchmarking to look at all the different technologies and the value add of long duration energy storage. We'll be publishing this week our policy toolbox, which has a lot of great insight and parallels to a lot of the themes and recommendations that IIH is doing. So again, building on partnerships and strengthening our efficiency and effectiveness through the global economy working together. And then you heard today that the platform and the matchmaking tool that we have. And then also starting to really look at regional roadmaps. We've done a lot of business case studies, and again, look forward to more partnerships with additional organizations to highlight where there's a ton of lessons learned from Germany, Australia, Japan, the US. There's so many different opportunities here. So again, looking forward to the partnerships to expand upon the education outreach that's needed for promoting the value out of long duration energy storage, and again, the role that pump storage will play. Next slide, please. So it's been really great working with IHA, and just there's so much information, as you've heard today. There are many reports where you can get all of our fact-based information and data. You can download these reports. The links were also shared in the chat, but please be able to, in this presentation, you can link on all these. You can see from both the LDES Council and IHA's, you can become a member, a partner. As you see, we're both growing organizations that have a lot of unique networks and value add. And you can follow us on our social, on LinkedIn, Twitter, and on our website. So again, thank you all so very much for taking the time. It's great to have the opportunity to work with you and hear your questions and answers and dialogue to really start to continue to push forward. The long duration energy storage is such a critical component to decarbonizing our global economies. We can accelerate the scaling up and the innovation together, and look forward again to working with all of you. And thank you again for your time. And thank you, Alex and IHA. Thanks, Rebecca, very much. Thanks to the panelists.
Goodbye.
Bye. Have a great day.